Well, good morning, everyone. If I can have your attention. Let me welcome you to this special event, and thank you for being here today with us. I am Xavier Costa, I'm the Dean of the College of Arts, Media and Design, and our college, together with the School of Architecture, is organizing this event, and also in collaboration with the Northeastern Center for the Arts. So this is the City Design and Sustainability Symposium that has been in the making for a while, because this is part of a series of actions that our college has initiated together with Northeastern University in the area of sustainability and city design. We have a number of new activities coming up. We have a new graduate degree that will start this coming fall. We have an undergraduate degree in urban landscape that is already in place. The university is very actively promoting different actions around the theme of sustainability, which is one of the strategic themes for Northeastern. And we have also been working very closely with the College of Social Science and Humanities, and particularly with the Public Policy Program around this theme. We have faculty that have come as joint hires with that program, and we are also initiating other collaborations with other colleges. So this is really a very ambitious project that is taking different forms, and this symposium is just part of this larger initiative on city design and sustainability. I'm going to introduce the person who has been responsible for putting together this program, Jane Amidon. She's a professor of landscape architecture and director of the urban landscape program in our School of Architecture. And she will be introducing the rest of the event and also our guest speakers. Jane?
Thank you, Xavier, and welcome to the City Design and Sustainability Symposium. It's a real pleasure to see a range of people in the audience today. Welcome to our panelists and welcome to our moderators. And thank you in advance for participating. I'm going to start with a slide. I throw this up here. It is a selection of from the top 20 most popular jobs forecast for the year 2030. This is from a study commissioned by the British government, published in The Guardian. And I put this out here simply to stimulate groupthink today around the notion that everything is in flux, of course, but in particular, as jobs and industries change, we see economies change, we see new lifestyles emerge, we see the building blocks of the city start to evolve. And we, as design thinkers, particularly here, people with their interest here in this room, in this college, in this university, in this city, will be the ones to accommodate with new forms, new systems, and new arrangements. I think our conversation today will be helped by defining our terms. Importantly, our goal for the symposium is not so much to get together and devise a new approach to urban design toward the end of sustainable and green urbanism, but rather to break down the terms between city and design and sustainability, and to really approach each of those neutrally from our interdisciplinary backgrounds and understand an open dialogue between new notions of what the city can be, what the role of design thinking is, and what sustainability is, wants to be, and has potential to evolve into. I love to start with reference points, and I think many of us in this room were educated upon, or at least in our practices, are very aware of two touchstones. One, Kevin Lynch's image of the city, and second, Holly White's The Social Life of Small Urban Spaces. These studies provided, at a certain moment in the late 20th century, a set of vocabularies, a set of research terms that understood the city in terms of structure, in terms of framework, in terms of corridors, nodes, a fabric that people interacted with. But today, we see other touchstones emerging, of course, ranging, and I just selected this very quickly, ranging from Gavin Newsom's recent book, Citizenville, which looks at a digital basis for urban governance, to the fact that a number of urban governments today are publishing their own volumes that approach the environmental basis for urban systems from an economic perspective and propose a series of metrics to understand the city simultaneously as an environmental organism and an economic organism. Personally, when I think about the goals of this symposium, the famous Charles and Ray Eames film from the late 20th century, from the 1970s, Powers of 10, is a touchstone. And I say this for a couple of reasons. It has themes embedded in the conceptualization of the film and the making of the film that really ring true with a lot of our interests shared in city making and city management, in city financing, and sustainability and design thinking. First of all, Charles and Ray Eames' practice was, of course, inherently interdisciplinary. They were graphic designers, communication designers, architects, furniture makers. They worked in textiles, in photography, and film. At the heart of their practice, they worked in information and with information, and they were funded by information industries, including IBM. We see returning as a major funder in our urban lives at this point. More on that later. They really worked with information as a cultural object to produce urban culture. They also introduced the notion of criticality in urban studies to a great degree at that point in time. And they understood that the grand paradigm shifts going on in late 20th century, economic shifts, social shifts, environmental shifts, technological, were about the production or the grounds for production of ideas, of objects, of media. And as Charles Eames famously said, everything eventually connects. And I think that we'll find in our panels today that rings very true. So how do we see the city today? We could ask ourselves, we could ask equally, how do we see ourselves? Because, of course, the performance of the city is very much about identity formation, or the performance of our environment is very much about our personal identity formation. The theater of the city is very much about providing modes of subjectivity stemming from its complex systems. Cities are places of aesthetic wonder, and of course, increasingly, places of adventures in climate change. Cities are places imbued with social challenge and change, unrest, violence, and profound innovation. Cities love hyperproductivity, providing us constant new models for systems ranging from transit to housing, industry, waste, recreation. Cities are a context for leisure, for pleasure, for learning, a media and communications platform, and an arena for risk management and reward. The city region today is emerging as the locus of response and responsibility, adaptation and innovation. Now, this might seem atavistic. Of course, we all know that in the first millennium, the rise of the city-state consolidated wealth and power. But what we see today is quite different. It's a bottom-up spreading of responsibility and decision-making, at least in theory, using technological platforms to understand the city as a place for participatory urbanism as opposed to top-down management. We are agents of a public realm in transition, to borrow a phrase from a colleague. We, as urbanites, are searching for emerging typologies of public space. We understand the city as an ecological urbanism, an ecological organism that's scalable. We understand information as aesthetic. And this might seem to be a return of modernism, but rather than machine-age technology, what we see today in our cultural renaissance are the emergence of customizable social habitats. We are part of shifting populations, shifting demographic trends, economic patterns, all of which follow the biological principle: adapt, migrate, or die out. We seek urban leaders who are entrepreneurs. We seek urbanites who are entrepreneurs and urban institutions who act entrepreneurially. This is simply a question of survival, given our current economic and environmental paradigm. Characteristics that we are coming around today in terms of design thinking for cities and sustainability include an interest in intersection across governing agencies, our research agendas, our development actors. Instead of direct competition that breeds redundancy, of course, a little competition is good, but avoiding redundancy in place of rich intersection of resources that produce new opportunities. We increasingly understand that disturbance is a good thing, and that, in fact, cities are healthier and more resilient when they are allowed to constantly respond to and adapt to minor to intermediate level disturbances, whether they are social, economic, or environmental. That this is healthier than stasis. And we also are coming around to the idea of resourcing versus single solution resolving. City districts, city parcels, rather than proposing a single master plan intended to play out over time, we're assessing individual and dynamic components which can be intersected and disturbed in various ways as a set of resources as opposed to final solutions. So our questions, our broad questions for today: what will our cities look like in the future? How will they work? Who will live in them? Who will pay for them? How does design thinking prepare us for the future? There's an incredible amount of innovative and interdisciplinary thinking happening across the fields of design, planning, policy, science, technology, law, business, government, industry, and increasingly, it's a collaboration with the public in a move towards open source urbanism. We hope with this symposium to consider new modes of urban action, intervention, and invention. We hope to raise questions and common areas of interest. And we hope to examine the role of arts, media, and design, not strictly as humanist pursuits, but at the very heart of how we understand the science, the policy, and the business of urban culture. I'll take a moment and describe the format for today. We'll start with a keynote address by Garo Aquino of SWA. We then have 3 panels, the first of which is Science of Design. We have a 90-minute break for lunch, or if you need to catch up on work. Our 2 panels in the afternoon, Policy of Design and Business of Design, are followed by a reception at 4:30. And we encourage everyone to attend the reception, and hopefully our dialogue continues there. Each panel will kick off with a very brief introduction by the moderator, in which they will introduce the panelists. Each panelist will have 5 minutes and 5 slides to present themselves, their interests, a particular theme which they're hoping to put on the table for discussion today. And finally, I would like to introduce Gerdo Aquino. He has joined us today from Los Angeles. Gerdo is the president of SWA, which is a global and renowned planning, urban design, and landscape architecture firm with over 50 years of experience. Gerdo is a fellow of the American Society of Landscape Architects. He is a recipient of numerous national honor and urban honor design awards. He is an adjunct at the University of Southern California, where he's been instrumental in founding the Master of Landscape Architecture program. His research and practice areas include infrastructure, creative programming, and natural systems integration. Regions of expertise range from North America to China and Latin America. He's the author of several books, blogs, and interviews. And Gerdo, if I can quote for you for just a moment, his interests revolve around an evolutionary approach to strategizing economically and environmentally sustainable multi-purpose infrastructure systems, reversing urban sprawl, and regenerating our invaluable natural resources. He provides a voice, a compelling balance between the vision and the pragmatism needed to understand the role of design thinking for our cities. He's an academic and a practitioner around ideas of sustainable urbanism. Welcome, Gerdo.
Thanks for that introduction, Jane. I wasn't sure you were talking about me. Maybe that was a good day that I had. I'm really honored to be here. I'm happy to talk about the kind of issues that will be addressed at this symposium. As Jane pointed out, I live in Los Angeles. I lived in Northern California before that. Went to school out here in the Northeast. I'm always finding a way to come back out here. So I was in Ho Chi Minh, China, a few weeks ago, working with city planners on trying to figure out how the city can grow, how the city can take on more people, densify, but also create a quality of life that everyone can appreciate, people who live there, people who visit there, tourists, etc. And I was turning the corner in downtown Ho Chi Minh, I saw this image. I thought, wow, as much as they want to move forward, they're also struggling with the kind of infrastructure that's not only ad hoc, but potentially dangerous, I think. And so the issue of infrastructure is something that's very close to me. I live in Los Angeles, a city of infrastructure, and the kind of advice that I can offer the city of Ho Chi Minh, China, is something that needs to be very measured and calculated. So in talking about infrastructure, this is a postcard of Los Angeles from the 50s. Very proud, right? It's the identity of the city. Infrastructure, cars, freeways. This is kind of what we were about. In fact, we're still about that. A lot of my colleagues think infrastructure is beautiful. I mean, this is the interchange between the I-10 and the 105 freeways. Richard Foreman, an ecologist at Harvard, said this is the loudest place on earth in terms of sustained audio sound and lack of wildlife or ecology. So it's these kind of observations that, for me, in my professional career and academic career, I think allow me to ask the kind of questions that need to be asked. Unlike Boston, we don't have much green space. The green space we do have is up in the mountains. It's 300 feet above sea level. The rest of it is just a basin full of concrete. The average temperature in downtown LA is about 6 degrees warmer than outlying areas around the city. So with this symposium, I asked myself, what is city design? How can design matter? How can it make a difference? So I kind of put my thoughts together on this diagram. And like what we'll talk about today, I think design happens when business, science, politics, and culture all move at the same pace. And that's important to know, because when they move at different paces, then you'll get different results. And how you measure design will also change. So in this first example, where things move at slightly different pace, business maybe is moving faster than culture, being that culture maybe doesn't either appreciate or understand or desire what the business side wants, you end up with areas like LA where there is too much concrete. And the interesting thing is that in the 30s, there actually was a vision for LA where business and politics and culture all moved at the same pace. And it was Olmsted's vision for Los Angeles, where the city was interconnected with greenways. But they were, again, going back to this diagram, they weren't happening all at the same time, so it didn't get funded, and of course, you know where we are today. We are here. So the Los Angeles River is concrete. It's Army Corps of Engineers, whose motto is let's try. So they tried, and they did this. And we're trying to fix things. We're trying to get to the point where all of these different factors are moving at the same pace. And when that happens, I think great design happens, great planning happens, and we can start to appreciate how a city can be better and how design matters. Another observation, again, going back to Los Angeles, we have about 12 street sections covering the entire city. And you end up with areas like this, where 40% of our streets are way too wide. They have the serviceability, but they don't have the kind of functions that they need. Everyone is talking about transforming alleyways, and certainly in Los Angeles, we're moving ahead with a lot of different initiatives where all these different elements are moving forward at the same pace. They're sustainable, they're highly functional, they're for people, but they can still have the trash trucks that come in and pick up trash. I'm a co-author of a book called Landscape Infrastructure that tries to coalesce what infrastructure is becoming, that it's becoming this kind of multifunctional, high-performance system that builds on existing systems, but also gives us a way to create new systems where infrastructure isn't necessarily about cars or trains. It could also be about people and ecology. This research has led to this diagram that explains how within a firm like SWA, we're 220 people, landscape architects, we do have a research component to us. We have the resources to focus on aspects of our profession that matter. And this is just a diagram that talks about our connection to not only advocacy topics, but also the kind of research that's being done at USC. The book was published last year. It talks about different aspects of performance and increment. But I think what it boils down to is that the research can inform the work that we as professionals and academics can do with infrastructure. This is a student project at USC where the proposal is to cap over a depressed freeway. Los Angeles has about 7 cap parks currently underway in planning. This is one of them. This is in it's the Hollywood Freeway. And so as much as the students are addressing cap parks, the city is right behind them in wanting to build them. We're also looking at our in-between spaces, leftover spaces, anything we can get our hands on, which at the same time happens to be the public right-of-way. So if the city is going to make change, it's going to be within the public right-of-way first because they can control that and the funding is a little easier. We're also interested in how plants can become intertwined with infrastructure and the kind of phytoremediation purposes that they serve. And I'm also interested in how infrastructure could relate to natural systems. At first glance, it may look like freeway, but when you look at it closer, these are actually ecological systems that happen everywhere around the world. So now I offer 5 case studies. These are case studies that build upon the notion that design matters in cities, from Los Angeles to China to other cities. I'll start with Los Angeles. The city is aware of their problems. They know that only 14% of the population has access, a quarter-mile access to open space. The rest of us, you have to get in a car or a train and get up to 300 feet above sea level and be outdoors. And it's a problem. It's a big problem. And on top of that, we only capture 16% of our stormwater. So the 12 inches of rainwater we do get, a small percentage of that is captured. So remember that part too. This project then tries to understand both of those issues in a very small project. This is along Bayou Creek, which is an arm of the Los Angeles River. And these images are very familiar to you, I'm sure. Everything just dumps directly into these concrete channels. You end up with these super wide right-of-way Army Corps of Engineer drainage sections. But there are real communities around them, communities that don't really want to be a part of that river. And this project seeks to change that paradigm. This is a typical landscape in Los Angeles where the levee keeps all the water back. And all of these levees are more or less like this. The Army Corps of Engineers said you can't plant on it, you can't do any trees, you can't put any structures, just leave it. It's stable, it's strong, and that's that. Well, it's changing. There are probably no less than 10 public agencies and maybe 20 nonprofits that are interested in seeing a project like this move forward, because it's the community that is starting to say, well, we have all this land, why can't we do something with it? How can we change the way in which LA can have access to open space? Here's the site. I'll put a little arrow there. And the idea was simple. Just move the bikeway and create this park at the edge of the river to make it recognizable, to put it on people's minds that there is a potential for space. As with any project, outreach was critical. But what we did here is we captured all the stormwater that happened within the sub-watersheds of this area. So it's not a lot of water, but it's certainly filtering the water before it goes to the creek. We have our kind of treatment train, as we like to call it, not only capturing the water, but running it through a linear park. And then the kind of levee section that happens here is transformed into a high performative section that can treat water, but also be a place for people. In the end, it was a collaboration with Army Corps of Engineers who, again, said we couldn't plant any trees, which makes sense, but we're able to plant native plants and put a bikeway in and other kinds of amenities for the community. Moving on to Shanghai, a place that is super dense with more high-rises than I've ever experienced in one geographic area. And juxtaposed to that, the kind of density of these old Shukumin housing projects that are part historical, but part happening decade after decade. And the city is struggling with how to improve the life in the streets. in the alleyways, but still maintain some of its culture and history with the gardens and other landscapes. So this project was supposed to be a street. So about 7,000 units in this diagram that you see here, about 14,000 residents. And what's in yellow was meant to be a street. And the city came to us and said, well, what kind of ideas do you have to make this street better? And we said, you know what, why not make it a street and make it a place for people? We'll keep the circulation going through there. But what we did is we created this pedestrian street that's 3 blocks long. This is what it was going to be, a street going through this development. And we turned it into a kind of urban respite for these 7,000 units, 14,000 residents. And the big idea here was to look at the urban forest, to combat heat island effect. And the urban forest, as many of you know, can do many things. It can absorb carbon, it can reduce heat island, it can reduce ambient temperatures, and it's become an amazing place for the residents and visitors and tourists who visit the project or are in the Shanghai area. It takes on stormwater. We've looked at to create porous paving details that are maybe inspired by architectural details. And I think the aspect of the street could be brought into it. So we added cafes, areas where the community can gather and talk and have an informal kind of interaction. And there are also sculptural fountains. You know, I think that with these kind of active, vibrant pedestrian realm spaces, there should be a variety of different elements and moves that can allow people to interact with each other and with nature. Katy Trail. So now we're moving on to Dallas. Dallas, Texas is an interesting place. How many people have been to Dallas? All right, good. That's good. This will make this easy. So Dallas, they looked at their Rails to Trails. And Rails to Trails is an interesting program, but they felt, why don't we take the Rails to Trails concept, but let it make money for us. Let's let it be an economic generator for the city. And that's exactly what they did, and we participated in that process. 300,000 people live within this trail. It's about 30 acres, 3.5 miles long. You can see in that image there, you can see downtown just to the bottom right, and then Trinity River, and how this trail rail moved into the neighborhood. We created all these different access points. We created separation grades between pedestrians and bicyclists. We created resting areas for different kinds of exercise or just to hang out and relax. And it turns out that over 700,000 people use this trail per year, and it's increasing. I think the last statistic I heard a month ago was now it's over 1 million. And a lot of it is because at every intersection, developers are on top of each other trying to get an address next to Katy Trail. So cafe with the Katy Trail, or the restaurant at Katy Trail, or something. And I think that the kind of landscapes that could be created here, they need to be smart about that. So how do you pay for it? Again, I think the symposium today is going to talk about some of these things, but just for this 3-acre section of trail, it's $160,000 of landscape maintenance and operations. Well, who's going to pay for that? How do you get that money? And it's creative programming that's making it accessible for people to be able to get out there. $140,000 is raised annually just from one event. Just that $140,000 can pay for that maintenance budget for a year. We found some survey results of Katy Trail. 30% used the trail after work. 83% of users felt safe afterwards. And the most important thing is that 50% of the responders would financially support the continued expansion of the trail. And that's important. It's kind of a cultural aspect of what we do that we're trying to align any kind of design or strategy with. In Houston, there are some interesting things happening. The Bayou, as you know, is a kind of languid body of water. It moves slow, but it's a large watershed area. It has history. There's a section of it in downtown Houston, right there, that the city felt was dangerous. Nobody was there. but it was in the heart of the city. What can they do to transform that space? This is what it looked like. You can see the erosion from all the storms, and certainly it's not a place where people would go probably daytime or night. What's interesting about this project is this diagram shows it's a hydrograph, time of concentration, and for the Bayou, the area in red, if you really look at this, on the bottom is hours. On the left is the flow rate, cubic feet per second. And in 1915, that was the rate of flow for the Bayou. So very slow, the ground was able to absorb all the stormwater. Today, it's this. So the same amount of stormwater that moved over that landscape now peaks out in about 20 hours. And when that happens, you get this. And this is what was happening in downtown Houston. It was absolutely terrible. The city said, we've got to do something about this. It's 2005. This is ridiculous. And we came in there. We've been working on this project for probably 15 years, maybe longer. And the simple strategy is just lay the slopes back, but also create erosion control methods that are like concrete but use plants. So we used deep-rooted plants here versus short-rooted plants so that when the cubic feet per second is really moving, these plants are creating stable slopes that won't erode. And today it's a beautiful place. The trees remain there. There are pathways. It's open. It's accessible. It's part of the regional bike trail. There are wayfinding elements throughout the park, and there are programs that we had no idea would ever be invented. The community came around and said, hey, let's have this event. Let's have an annual canoeing event. Species of wildlife are coming back, and rents have increased. Yay, right? Developers love that. And, you know, sometimes you think about this, sometimes you don't, but I think design is what makes it happen. The subsequent phases have created these vibrant bridges that connect even more districts to the Bayou. They're part sculpture, part art. And they've become a place where now developers and the city are trying to put people there in a place that nobody wanted to be. This is near the end. California Academy. I'd be remiss not to talk about green roofs as a way of improving cities. This is the California Academy of Science in San Francisco. It was an existing building that was basically transformed and made into this green roof. It's more high performative. What used to attract 300,000 visitors a year now attracts 2 million visitors a year. Huge economic generator for the city. The state-of-the-art green roof does many things. In this particular example, it absorbs about 5.3 million liters of water per year, which is about 1.8 million gallons of water per year is absorbed in that green roof. You know, how do you create state-of-the-art green roof? Or you got to hold the soil in place. So we worked with experts and created these cocoa trays made out of coconut fiber. And what they do is they hold the plants in place, and they're stacked edge to edge, but over time they erode, and the plants create the medium in which to control erosion. And these kind of high-tech solutions are not only interesting to us, but interesting to the public. I think so interesting that the Academy created a docent program for people who get up on the green roof and, you know, maybe want to put a green roof on their house. I don't know. That's what they told me. They said people got up there and said, how can I do this on my house? And I said, well, let's do a docent program and offer an aspect of education. And we've exported this kind of idea, technology to China. China said, well, we like green roofs, but we want this one to be even more technological, steeper, but still have the ecological functions. So it's kind of a challenge. We worked with an architecture firm called Morphosis out of Los Angeles. We took on the challenge of the green roof. We made it twice as steep, but integrated a kind of architecture within the green roof that was very fresh and unique. Campuses are returning to cities. High-tech campuses like in San Francisco, Google and Facebook are returning to the city, and they also want campuses that are unique and highly sustainable. This project turned out very well, and it has a kind of landscape that is native to that area, so it's not just imported stuff. So I end with city futures, and I And I end with the academy again, the green roof. Because I think for cities to improve and to become better places, they need to be thinking about how adaptive are these places. You know, they're good today, but maybe not so good tomorrow. And so I wonder maybe these places will be taken over by different communities and used for urban farming or to raise chickens or to maybe raise livestock. You know, because real estate is not cheap, and that they could be multifunctional. And I hope that, at least in the work that I do and the aspects of teaching at USC, can start to embody more of the kind of creative thinking that you'll discuss today and in the future. Thank you. And any questions at all? It's the.
Wondering what level of receptivity you're getting from the clients that you're talking to. Are you having to sell ideas of strategies for sustainability, higher performance landscapes, or are they coming to you requesting this? What's the kind of reciprocity that you are experiencing?
Sure. You know, a lot of public planning officials are going to conferences, symposiums like this, Urban Land Institute, American Society of Landscape Architects, engineering conferences, because they're curious. They want to know what's happening. So by the time they call myself or my colleagues at SWA or probably people in this room, they're informed. And it's not that difficult to get them to understand the approaches that I shared with you here. I think the biggest challenge is trying to figure out who will pay for it. The ideas are there, they're behind it 100%, but it all boils down to who will pay for it. The public-private investments are one way to do it. Philanthropists in your city, it's another way to do it. But having some kind of policy is really where it's at. And the community outreach component. It's both. You know, I think what I tried to share with you today is that, you know, as designers, you can't just design. It's not just design. It's all those things. It's the policy, it's business, it's culture, it's science, all moving together, and we understand that. And without understanding those different components, you're just a designer, and you can make a difference. I mean, we see it around the world. These beautiful projects. And we want to make beautiful places as well, but we want these places to be backed up by some substantial evidence about how it can be supported and sustained long term. Yes?
Kind of a follow-up to that question. Who do you tend to approach first? I mean, do you have the idea laid out before you approach the financial backers? Or do you then, you start with the financial backers and then come up with a vision? How do you, is there kind of, I'm sure there's no formula for this. There really is no formula. I wish if I had that formula, I'd put it up on the screen for you. I think it's really the leadership of the city. It's your mayor, it's your city council, and those folks really need to believe in it, because I think that's where it starts. And in the places that we've worked, I think I see the examples I gave you: Shanghai, Houston, Dallas, Los Angeles. In all of those cases, there was leadership from the city side, and with that, it gave us the energy to push these agendas forward. This gentleman in the back.
Several of your examples describe the follow-up programming as essential for the community to actually get re-engaged. How much of the planning for that happens before, so that you build it into the design? And you mentioned in that same vein with Katy Trail of the programming then turning out to be part of the financing strategy. And was that also thought of in advance? And if not, where all this comes sort of serendipitously afterwards, how do you use it to sell the project in the first place?
Right. That's a good observation. I would say with the Buffalo Bayou, and I'll cite maybe 3 examples to answer your question. With the Buffalo Bayou in Houston, the only programming we really came up with that we could stand behind was the increased bicycle paths, access points between the neighborhood and the bayou, which is 50 feet below grade, and large areas for activities. That was it, really. Beyond that, we felt that we would be dreaming a little bit, wishing, and we would maybe let some people down if some of that wishing program didn't happen. So we said, you know what, let's just lay it down a good framework, put in the big items that we feel really confident about, work with the community, and let's see what happens. And that's certainly what happened. The community came in and said, let's do these 10 things, and that was great. With the Katy Trail, that was a little bit different. The Katy Trail, much more aggressive with the economics. That particular community got together, created Friends of the Katy Trail, and one of their priorities not only was to get people out to be healthy and active, but for that thing to make money and to sustain itself. So that from day one had a slightly different take. Developers were involved in that one as well. They kind of saw the opportunity and got behind us to make it happen. I think with Shanghai, it's the totally opposite. It's we gave 100 ideas for programming and we let them edit it. So it's always a little different depending on where you are geographically. Not sure if that quite answered that or not, kind of. Gentleman there.
Were you approached by the municipal government from Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, and will you be doing work there?
We are doing a project there. The project is quite large, and that's why the city is involved. It's right to the east of downtown Ho Chi Minh, near the river. Mm-hmm. They felt that we understood water and issues of flooding, and they also felt that we understood how to plan in that kind of context and that kind of density. So that the work we're doing in Ho Chi Minh is a joint collaboration. Because of its scale, the city is keen on making sure that the flooding issue is addressed.
That's the primary motivator from their point of view, as opposed to the green.
Yes,
green
because
space.
they felt that they needed a firm that knew issues of flooding first. Let's call it a flooding first approach. Mm-hmm. And second, understand development and planning. And they felt we offered that kind of expertise. This gentleman in the front.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Thank you. Just related to the questions about sort of what causes these projects to become realized, in the sense of sort of what kind of federal incentives any of these projects are capitalizing on, in the sense of it seems amazing that the cities are sort of, and something like the California Center for the Arts are sort of pushing this direction, and I'm curious what other sort of incentives they get from maybe more regional planning or even federal planning initiatives.
The project in Los Angeles that I showed you, Milton Street Park, that's on the levee, that one actually has public funding. Proposition 84 was a voter-approved proposition that allocated millions of dollars towards public open space throughout California. That project got some of that money. It also got some of the infrastructure money, kind of shovel-ready projects through the Obama administration because it's within the right-of-way. In that case, the Army Corps of Engineers right-of-way, drainage way. So it got some of that money too. The remaining amount of money needed for that project came through the nonprofits. Mountains Recreation Conservation Authority, Baldwin Hills, Los Angeles Conservatory. So that one is really ideal. I mean, I wish a lot of public projects had that component of funding from different sources. Yes.
Gerdo, first of all, excellent presentation. I mean, I think you covered a wide range of work, and the nature of the questions that is coming from the audience really reflects, I think, exactly what we're trying to get at in this conference, which is not just the individual achievements of different disciplines, but rather how do we bundle this stuff together to make a more sort of effective interdisciplinary approach. And something that seems really clear in a way to build on Peter Wiederspann's earlier question is the need in a way to catalog the different economic models for this kind of work. Because it seems very clear to me, looking at this, that there really are wildly different engines for this kind of stuff. And that there are already a number of models, but by cataloging and making sort of a list of types of engines for this, we could see more clearly those that don't exist yet.
Right.
So for example, there are some that are in so much of the private interest of a real estate developer that it's such an amenity that they can actually capture the cost of doing it in the value of their real estate proposition right off the bat. That's,
right.
Let's say, the easiest market-driven kind.
Right.
That's not usually the case, though, right? Because the expense is for something that's shared by lots of landowners, and the government has to be involved. When you're in China, it's completely different because the line between the public and private sector is not as clearly maybe articulated as it is in our society. It seems that when we talk about mayors in Boston, you may or may not know, our mayor has recently become more forceful about articulating performance criteria on the environmental front for buildings. And it seems like that, which is similar to car regulating the mileage that cars get, that then makes a market for delivering that performance. Do you know what I mean? If everybody has to get 45 miles a gallon,
sure,
we're not going to tell you how to do it, but that's part of the product.
Right.
So it seems like that's certainly something that we can be. I'm just trying to leverage what your presentation is about into, let's say, the more interdisciplinary action agenda here.
Sure. I mean, if cities were able to enact code that required you to do specific things in the landscape, that would be great. It would be less of a battle.
Right.
It would be easier, and then you can focus your energy on other things, right, like the financing side or the politics.
Right.
But when there's no code, you're having to fight that battle of just getting good design in there.
Right. Well, so for example, you end up seeing, if you want to call them demonstration projects. There's a couple of different clients that you showed that would gain benefit from the sort of demonstration project idea. For example, the California Academy of Science. Well, they actually, because everybody's interested disproportionately in the science of this when they go to that museum, their attendance went up so much that it actually did pay for what they did, which wouldn't necessarily be the case for an insurance company, right?
Right.
So
right.
It's interesting in that regard.
Yeah. Yes.
Beautiful project, as a matter of fact. But what I'm curious about is I've reread Design with Nature recently, and I was just amazed. Everything is there about ocean warming, all the technique, using green infrastructure and all that, and with little means. I mean, that was pre-GIS, pre-data. And I'm wondering and looking at, what do we do differently now with the tools? And I'm assuming, you didn't show it, but I'm assuming that the use of CAD, BIM, you're working with scientists, data flow, and you must have quite precise information working with scientists for your water management. Could you just explain a little bit how it informs your design?
Well, it's, let's see, Buffalo Bayou, probably more than any of the other examples I gave you, was absolutely multidisciplinary. That team was comprised of probably 30 consultants. And the way in which we worked with them was to start with just the really basic goals, and to then ask every engineer to develop a set of metrics, baseline metrics, that we could then understand how to move the project forward. And so our tools for that are everything from the GIS to the, well, not really BIM, but Rhino, AutoCAD, and probably a number of other programs to process that data. We certainly don't crunch the numbers in a way that engineers do, but we do try to transform those engineering calculations into designed landscapes. And those landscapes then, you may not be able to look at it and understand the engineering behind it, but we know that through the process we went through, they can respond to those challenges and also move beyond, kind of typical sections that were problematic in the past. I'm not sure if I answered that question directly, but.
Good. Thanks for the question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.